Hello and welcome back to the Sync Take Podcast. My name is Calvin Williams. I'm here with my co-host Marco Rogers, and today we are very excited to get into Week 8 of college football as the games have finally begun. We are heading into the Ohio State versus Penn State week, which we will recap later, or predict/recap later. And it's just, this is, in my opinion, this is where the season really gets going, where good games really start happening and where every game starts to matter. So, I see no reason to waste any time. Let's get straight into a recap of last week so that we can get into this new exciting week. Marco?
Very exciting week last week. To start off, Michigan completely dominates Indiana here, 52-7. Early on, Tracy Jackson Davis's brother, Indiana's quarterback, he looked pretty good. They were moving down the field. Michigan started with back-to-back 3-and-outs, and then that pick from Rod Moore, kind of felt like Michigan was kind of escaping there. Obviously, we're going to win, but, Indiana was, they didn't just get one lucky play. They were completely dominating the first half of the first quarter. But then Michigan just turned it on offensively. Indiana could not keep up with us. JJ looks very good here, 14 for 17, 222 yards. Just really good performance out of him. Run game was not great. Benjamin Hall was our leading rusher. He came on in the later end of the fourth quarter, 9 rushes, 58 yards. Garbage time rusher is our leading runner. That is not great to see. However, Corum did do well when he got the ball for the most part. Edwards continues to look pretty bad in the run game. So pretty much more the same and a little bit more dominance here from the passing game for Michigan.
This is just a continued story of what we've seen all season. A very solid pass game. Would like to see more guys in the run game. But that's about it. Offensive line could definitely use to be a little more dominant in the run game, in my opinion, if I had to critique something. But overall, just really good second half performance, and great one for Michigan. Moving on, number 7, Washington, outlasting number 8, Oregon, 36-33. Michael Penix leading a game-winning drive to cap it off. He is really proving why he should be, right up there in the Heisman contender. And Bo Nix also had an amazing game. Perfectly bodacious, if you ask me. 337 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Michael Penix, in the end, got the job done. 4 touchdowns. Did throw a pick, which was pretty big. But the Huskies get it done here. 100 yards on the ground from Dylan Johnson. Just absolutely great game from him. And then Romo Dunze, as per usual, getting it done in the air. Marco?
This was a game here that just the best players definitely came to play. Penix dominant, both run games pretty dominant, including Bucky Irving for Oregon having a very dominant game. I think they probably should have gotten him the ball a little more because late in that game he was just unstoppable. Frank Lakeland, big game from Oregon. And then Romo Dunze, obviously probably the second best receiver in all of college football. Just throw it up to him and he'll come down with it. This is a really tough game for Oregon, though, because, I don't think anyone really can come into this environment and play this good. I think probably Michigan and maybe Georgia are the only 2 teams I think that would play Washington this competitively in this environment. The crowd was going crazy. But yeah, pretty good performance out of Oregon. This honestly made me more confident in them than less confident. But still a tough loss. And with the gauntlet coming up, you definitely are in a tough situation if you're Oregon.
Tough loss for sure, but definitely not out of playoff contention. I would say pretty much they still control their own destiny if they win out. Would you say so?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. If you beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship, they would definitely be in that contention.
For sure. Moving on, we have number 21 Notre Dame getting a huge win in a dominant performance over number 10 USC. It was just time. USC had been hanging on by a thread against not very good teams. like barely beating Arizona, barely beating Colorado, letting up way too many points against like Arizona State. I mean, in San Jose State at the start of the season. In this game, finally, the wall was broken, and USC proved that they really just are not that good. Notre Dame absolutely dominated them, 48 points. And you're just not going to win many games when you allow 48 points. Not to mention when you only score 20. So definitely really rough game for USC. And me and Marco have been saying this for multiple weeks. Like it was just a matter of time until they got outed and proved that they just weren't that good. Marco?
Yeah, by the way, I mean, the USC defense was not bad in this game. They allowed 13 legitimate points where Notre Dame had to drive all the way down the field. Notre Dame had about 6 of those drives, only got points on, I guess, 3 of them, but 2 of them were decently long field goals. I mean, this USC defense did not do bad. The problem is Caleb Williams was throwing pretty much pick sixes, putting Notre Dame at about the inside the 5-yard line. So that's 3 touchdowns right there. You got the kick return touchdown, then one of the fumbles put them inside the 15. I mean, this was just completely on the offense. Like, I think if that USC, instead of those turnovers, just punts, this game is going to be more like a 31-20 and a game that maybe the offense could have done something late. The problem is Caleb Williams just put this defense in such bad situations they couldn't really do anything. I mean, you ended up outgaining Notre Dame. Obviously, they didn't have to go the full length of the field. You held the ball for longer. Just Caleb Williams played bad, and that's what cost you this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not a common occurrence, but definitely could have proved himself to be like the for sure Heisman if he played well in this game. He just didn't. Like, obviously, he's gonna still be the probably number 1 draft pick. Not much question in my mind, but like when the lights were shining bright, he just did not have a very good game tonight, and that's definitely disappointing. I mean, for USC, like you said, you're not gonna win any games when you have 5 turnovers. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Especially in a high-level matchup like that. Moving on, number 15, Oregon State beats number 18, UCLA. Disappointing game for my Bruins. I don't have much to say about this one, Marco. What about you?
I mean, Dante Moore is just not it. If DTR had this kind of defense and run game last year, I think UCLA could have been a legitimate natty contenders. I mean, I'm not sure what happened to his defense over the course of the offseason. I mean, if UCLA didn't turn the ball over 3 times, then I think they legitimately might have had a chance in this game. But Dante Moore is just not it. He's a true freshman. I think next year and junior year, he could be a very good player, but this is just proof that no matter how talented a freshman quarterback will not have much success against elite teams.
Yeah, like people don't realize this guy was literally the best one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in his class, and I mean he's just getting obliterated on the college level. And I mean just most quarterbacks when they come into college, even when they are that best player in the country, they usually still sit a year behind a veteran guy. They have to feel out the college game. It's much different than high school. You can't just throw streaks to the best wide receivers in the country anymore. So definitely a wake-up call for Dante Moore this year. But I am hopeful for the future of UCLA football. Moving on, we have Arizona absolutely killing number 19 Wazoo on the road. I mean, we've seen flashes of this Arizona offense against teams like USC, and obviously USC doesn't have a great defense. But still, like putting up 41 points against at the time top 6 team is very impressive. So definitely a statement win for Arizona, 44-6 over number 19 Washington. Just super good win. Washington State, just I don't have much to say about them. They just terrible game. Couldn't get anything going on the ground at all, and their defense just got absolutely dominated.
After scoring the first drive, they did not really move the ball past the 50 again. Cam Ward, miserable performance. After this team's win against Oregon State, I thought that this offense was good enough to beat up on bad defenses and make up for their defense and maybe allow them to really compete in the Pac-12. But here they're showing this offense just had a few good games to start the year, and they're just not really that good.
Yeah, disappointing result to the Washington State season. Hopefully they can turn it around and Cam Ward can get back on track. Next up, we have number 14, Louisville getting stunned at Pitt. This Louisville team, me and Marco were talking about them last week, both very excited. After that win over Notre Dame, they just looked like a good team, frankly. But I mean, you can't lose to Pitt if you're hoping to make a push for possibly like a New Year's Six or even playoff game. I mean, you just can't lose to Pitt. I mean, that's just absolutely terrible. And not to mention 38-21, just absolutely dominated by Jack Plummer, the senior quarterback. Sorry, I'm stupid. Jack Plummer, not a good performance. I don't know what I'm talking about. 29 for 52. 350 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. That 350 yards looks good, but when you throw 52 passes, you got to be producing more than that. Margo?
Yeah, and the pick six. I mean, this was a game. Louisville was up 21-14.5. I was like, okay, yeah, now they're going to pull away. I mean, they out-yarded them completely. It was just a turnover battle. They turned the ball over 3 times. Pitt didn't. Pitt is a very bad team. They were 1-4 coming into this matchup, and they just didn't turn the ball over, didn't make mistakes, did not play that well either. Like, their run game got shut down. Their pass game got shut down. Just a couple big plays in the pass game and a pick six is all you really need when the other team's going to turn the ball over that much. And just another example of how important holding on to the ball is.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, the Pittsburgh quarterback, Christian Value, completed 12 passes. And Pittsburgh only rushed for 88 yards. And they beat the number 14 team in the country, undefeated Louisville. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Moving on, number 12, UNC defeats number 25, Miami. Continuing to stay alive in that playoff hunt despite the early season scare against Appalachian State. Get another big win last week, and they head into next week a Virginia team that's not good at all. So they should get a 7-0, and then they only really have one more tough game on their schedule in Duke, and they're possibly looking at a route to the playoffs. Margo?
Yeah, just very good performance. Devontae Walker, the transfer who was denied eligibility by the NCAA several times, for pretty much no reason, finally gained eligibility a week ago, and he's proving that he is truly one of the better receivers in college football. I would say he might be top 10. That man is just unguardable. This Miami team has some elite corners. He went for 6 receptions, 132 yards, 3 touchdowns, including a 56-yard catch. And, I mean, in that third quarter, UNC just completely dominated and took over this game. And that was the difference. Just coming out of halftime, they came out hot, and Miami just didn't. And North Carolina gets a big win. Drake made a pretty good performance. Their defense still not great, but it's better than last year, and that's good enough for them.
Yeah, that's it for the college football recap segment. Moving on, we did this segment earlier in the year. You know it, you love it. Pretenders versus Contenders, part 2. We've gotten a little deeper into the season, so we're gonna be giving you our take on who we believe, the teams that are in the playoff hunt, or a couple of the teams that are in the playoff hunt. Who do we believe that has a legitimate chance to make the playoff? Are they a pretender or are they a legitimate contender? Marco, can you start us off with number 11 Alabama, a pretender or contender?
This is pretty tough for me because this team, I think they're gonna finish the season 11-1 just because they don't really play anyone and they're playing some pretty decent football right now. It comes down to that SEC championship. Brock Bowers is gonna be healthy, and I mean I don't think Georgia is really that good of a team this year, but I think they're better than Bama. So I'm gonna say kind of in between, but I don't think they're making the playoffs. But I don't think that they're like a complete pretender here from Bama. So it's going to come down to one game for this team, which is why I'm kind of in between, but I'm leaning towards pretender.
Yeah, I'm just going to go contender because if your season relies on one game to make the playoffs, I'd say that gives you a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. Because, I mean, if this Alabama team wins out in the regular season, which is very possible for them, all they have to do is win a game against Georgia, which obviously is easier said than done. But I think, miracles can happen, and I think would not be the craziest thing that we've ever seen. So definitely, I would say contender. Next up, number 10, UNC, pretender or contender, Marco?
This team, similar to Bama, I think it comes down to one game. I think they do beat Duke. They're gonna finish the season around the number 6 spot. I think they'll go 12-0. So will Florida State, and I actually think they have a better chance of beating Florida State than Bama has at beating Georgia. So I think winner of North Carolina, Florida State, as long as both teams take care of business down the road, is going to make the playoffs. And I actually think North Carolina would probably win that game. So I'm going to say contender for them, although they really aren't that good.
Yeah, for UNC, I'm also going to say contender just because, like I said earlier, that lone Duke game that they have to play is really their only difficult game left on their schedule, and they have Clemson too, which might be a difficult game. But the Duke game's really their only legitimate threat during the regular season. And like I said, when your season comes down to one game, it's gonna give you a legitimate chance to make it. So I'm gonna go with contender. Marco, number 9, Oregon, pretender or contender?
This team, I think they're better than Bama, and they're significantly better than North Carolina by a lot. The only reason why I'm going to go with pretender is because looking at this schedule, Wazoo, that shouldn't be too tough. Yeah, I go to Utah, probably Cam Rising back. That's a tough game. You got to play USC at home. That offense is still dangerous despite last week's performance. And then you got to play Oregon State in a rivalry, another tough game. And then you got to beat Washington. I just think the odds, although this team is probably better than all the teams they're going to play outside of maybe Washington, that Pac-12 championship, I just think there's too many really tough games. So I think they'll drop a game and be a 2-loss team, which will not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna respectfully disagree with that. I think Bodacious Bo Nix is just an absolute playoff contender. They lost a close one against Washington. It's really hard to beat a good team twice, even though I think that's a stupid saying. It just is. So I think Oregon is definitely a legitimate contender. And then finally, number 4, Florida State, pretender or contender?
As we keep saying, if it's gonna come down to one game, you're a contender. This team, though, they have shown signs of kind of having a bit of a flop. Last week, actually, a pretty good performance against a decent Syracuse team. That was a bit more inspiring after a couple of really, really bad performances. You got Duke this week. That game is pretty much the hardest game for your season. You got a couple weeks, maybe you could slip up. You could slip up against Miami. You could slip up at Florida. I don't think this team will. I'm gonna say contender simply because it comes down to the ACC championship.
Yeah, I hate to say contender for all 4 of these teams, but sometimes that's how it goes. And I think this Florida State team's a contender despite their flaws, and despite the fact that I think they shouldn't make playoffs. Like I actually don't believe Florida State's that good of a team. But there's also no one on their schedule that can really beat them for their regular season. So yeah, it's gonna come down to that final game, possibly against UNC or someone else. But yeah, Florida State is definitely a contender despite me not liking them that much. So moving on, we're going to get into the NFL. Quick little recap, and then we'll get into our our NFL predictions, which will be quick, and then our college predictions. So started off, Lions beat the Bucs. Super good win for the Lions, 20-6. Defense looked absolutely dominant. I feel like every week we've had at least one of those tipped interceptions, which is just weird. We're just practicing our tip drill a lot, I guess. Defensive linemen are getting their hands up really nicely. And Goff just looks like an absolute beast at quarterback, even though we only put up 20 points, which, isn't bad in the NFL, but it's still, good enough to get the job done in a lot of games, especially when your defense is playing as elite as it is right now. Margo?
Yeah, this Lions defense definitely looks very good. I think this team, with that win, kind of proves they're definitely here to stay, and they'll be a very good team. Not sure how they'll fare in the playoffs. I think this team is definitely going to be a top 4 seed in the NFC, and honestly, likely a top 3 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, Lions are tied for first in the NFC right now because the because both the 49ers and the Eagles lost last week. So definitely looking good for them heading into week 7. Next up, Eagles lose at Jets. Just mentioned this. Just a really bad loss for the Eagles. I don't really have much to say about this. Marco, you want to give the recap?
Jalen Hurts just kind of proved that he's a little bit too inconsistent for this team to go undefeated, which some people thought they might do. They just had too many close games early in the year, which is why I kind of figured they wouldn't. A.J. Brown, good performance, but Jalen Hurts, he's a good rusher, but he kind of proved that he won't week by week give you a great performance by the air, and you just can't completely rely on him every single week.
Yeah, he's a young guy. You can't. It's really hard to go undefeated in this league. It's only been done like once ever, right? So yeah, it's really difficult. So you can't be too mad at Jalen Hurts. He's been playing very good for the past 2 years, honestly. Spanning from last season to now. So everyone has an off day. If you're an Eagles fan, you just gotta hope one of those off nights doesn't come when you're in the playoffs. Moving on, the Niners lose in Cleveland on a Jake Moody missed field goal. As much as it pains me to say that did happen, he doesn't do it much. Generally he's the most clutch kicker I've ever seen, especially at Michigan. I don't think he missed a single clutch kick. But tough miss for Moody. But then again, if you're the 49ers, 5-0, looking like the best team in the NFL undisputedly, and then your offense comes out and just plays absolutely terrible. Brock Purdy completed 12 passes in this game. They just got nothing going. He got sacked 3 times. Nothing really going in the running game, especially for Christian McCaffrey. Only 43 yards on the ground. He did get hurt, so that did contribute. Just nothing going in the air or on the ground for the Niners, and they lost a low-scoring battle. Marco?
Just bad performance out of Purdy. First regular season loss of his career for him. PJ Walker did not do that well, but he did enough. Browns run game good. And Niners, I still think they're probably the best team in the NFL, most complete team, but they get stunned a little bit here at Cleveland without a couple of playmakers in Samuel and McCaffrey.
For sure. Moving on to our final game. Marco would like to mention something about the Pats.
This game we pretty much could have won if we didn't have a 10-minute drive at the end of the fourth quarter. It kind of looked like a tank job because we looked like we could have won, but just decided not to. So I don't know if we should get Caleb after his performance, but hopefully we just get the number 1 overall pick and do something with it. That isn't drafting the D3 long snapper out of Southern Mississippi.
Okay. I do think Caleb Williams is the best option, pretty much undisputedly, though. He is so talented. But we'll see what the NFL GMs think in a few months. And then moving on to our NFL Week 7 predictions, we're only going to be doing 2 games. First off, the Lions at the Ravens. This is going to be a tough one for the Lions. Okay, don't get me wrong. The Lions are playing great on the road right now. 3-0 actually on the road. But, Baltimore's a very good team, and it's always going to be tough to stop Lamar, no matter what type of season he's having. And I feel like generally in the past, the Lions have struggled with mobile quarterbacks. But I'm still going to ride with the Lions. I think the Ravens have a hard time with the rush game in this one, even though I do understand that they do have one of the better rush defenses in the NFL. But I think we continue to get that push on the O-line like we did last week against the Buccaneers, who also had one of the better rush defenses in the NFL. We just get enough push, slow the game down, low-scoring battle, but the Lions get it done. Marco?
I think that the Ravens dominate the line of scrimmage here, but I don't think Lamar has his best performance. I think it'll be very close, coming down the wire. I think Justin Tucker hits a clutch field goal, and they take down the Lions. Though I do think the Lions will probably finish the season with 4 losses. I think this is one of them, probably one of their toughest games of the schedule remaining. So I think they'll drop it here in a very close one.
Not going to be an easy one this week. Next up, Dolphins at Eagles. just super good matchup. Dolphins, one of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL, if not the most high-powered offense in the NFL. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, despite not the Cowboys. Meanwhile, the Eagles, despite having their loss last week, are just one of the better teams in the NFL. I think the Dolphins get shut down, and the Eagles take this one. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, the only really elite team the Dolphins have played in the Bills, they got dominated. I think, although their pass game does have some success, they get shut down with the run game, which has been an underrated factor of this offense's big-time success. I think Eagles dominate the line of scrimmage and win this game pretty comfortably. I think they win it by 10.
All right, moving on. We're just going to do one quick segment between the NFL and college football. If you are a GM, what quarterback in the NFC would you want? So, I mean, notable options. We have like Brock Purdy. We have Jared Goff. And two of the top teams in the NFC. You have Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, many different quarterbacks to choose from. Who you got, Marco?
I'm going Jalen Hurts because of his dual threat ability. I think that he could have success with a team not as good. Goff has a pretty good team around him with a really good O-line and a good run game. Purdy probably has the best team around him in the whole NFL. He's pretty much the weak point of his team, even though he's not that bad. So give me Hurts. He's pretty young as well. I think he can lead a team being the best player on that offense, which I don't think the other two can do.
I'm going to show a little bit of bias here once again and take Jared Goff just because, like, he's showing that even though he might not have like quite the arm talent as a guy like Jalen Hurts or the athletic ability like him, he's showing that his just decision-making and ability to be a leader is enough to turn a team with really one good receiver and Amon-Ra St. Brown into a dominant force in the NFC. So, I mean, if I'm a GM, I really am liking Jared Goff.
Yep, definitely a reasonable take. Next up, college football. Start off number 2, Michigan at Michigan State. Cal, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, this one is just, in my mind, don't make it any more complicated than it is. This team lost to Rutgers last week. They're not good. Just show them that we are significantly better. Don't get anyone hurt. Get the job done. Marco?
Yeah, actually, we averaged the exact same amount of yards passing per game as MSU. Obviously, we are so much better than them at passing. A dude named Hauser is their quarterback. This game is definitely going to be personal for us after what they tried to do last year and what they did last year. They're just not a good program. They'll probably try to injure one of our players, so hopefully they don't get injured. And hopefully we just win this game by 45 and get out of there quick. Which I think we will do.
Yeah, I would say keep the starters in and beat them by 80, but Marco toned me down a little bit earlier and just said, nope, we don't want anyone getting hurt. MSU plays dirty, and that's how we're going to treat them. So get the starters out in the third quarter when we're up by 50. So next up, we have Minnesota at number 24, Iowa. Marco, you want to take this one?
So this is actually going to be my upset pick. I think that Iowa is just not going to score over 20 points because they physically are incapable of doing so with the worst offensive coordinator in football history, and that is not an understatement. And that is an understatement. Without Cade or any good weapons, and they will definitely not be scoring over 20. They passed for 37 yards this week. That's what this offense is. They have a good pass defense, as they showed against Wisconsin last week. But Minnesota has a sneaky good run attack, which actually was pretty good against Michigan, but then they just went down quick, so they had to pass. I think PJ Fleck has the boys ready. They roll the boat into Kinnick Stadium and roll the boat out with a W. I think they pull out a huge win here and take down the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Iowa in this one just because of that defense. I don't think Minnesota's gonna be able to put up enough points. I think literally if Iowa makes a field goal, they win this game. So Iowa's defense dominates. Maybe get a pick six, 10-0 type win. Moving on, South Carolina at number 20, Missouri. And this is actually going to be my upset pick because South Carolina's had a lot of close calls against some very good teams. I mean, Georgia, they kept close, only lost by 10, and Georgia pulled away at the end a little bit. I mean, they were within 3 and up for most of that game. And last week against Florida, who's not a bad team at all, they only lost by a couple points. So yeah, definitely a tough one. Going to be a tough one for Missouri. I think the Gamecocks' air raid offense is going to need to counteract that solid pass defense by Missouri. And if they can do that, they definitely have a chance in this one. Even away at Missouri, it's obviously going to be a tough one, but Spencer Rattler is going to let it fly, and a good win for South Carolina here. Margo?
The only problem is South Carolina legitimately has a physical capability of defending the pass, and is what Missouri is very, very good at. I think Brady Cook those 400 yards and they completely blow the top off this defense. I think South Carolina does put up a good amount of points, but they just won't be able to keep up here with Missouri due to the lack of defense.
Yeah, definitely gonna be an interesting one to see how South Carolina holds on. Next up, number 17, Tennessee at number 11, Alabama. Must-win game for Alabama, I would say. I don't really consider Tennessee a playoff contender at this point, but definitely a must-win game for Alabama if they want to prove themselves to make the playoffs. I would like to see good performance from Jalen Milroe. Just kind of get the job done for Alabama. But it's going to be tough. I mean, Jalen Wright for Tennessee has had a very good season, and Alabama is going to have a hard time stopping him. But if Jalen Milroe can control the ball, like we said, not turning the ball over is so important. Alabama's going to get it on here. Margo?
Theoretically speaking, Tennessee will make the playoffs if they win out because they still have Georgia on their schedule, and if they beat Georgia, they would make the SEC championship. I don't think they'll do that. I think they lose here. Bama's just a more talented team. Milton's not that good. They depend too much on the run game. Alabama can stop the run game. The Tennessee defense is much improved from last year. However, they do struggle a bit against the run. Bama, I think, runs it all over them. Milroe maybe gets a rushing touchdown. Give me Bama here. 24-10, pretty low scoring game, two pretty good defenses, and not great offenses here.
All right, moving on, we have number 16 Duke at number 4 Florida State. Must win game for Florida State. This is one of their this is basically their last difficult game on the schedule. They have that game against Florida, which will be tough at the end of the season just because it's a rivalry. But Florida State gets through this game, and they have a pretty easy ride to the conference championship, and honestly, pretty easy ride to the playoffs. So, I think Jordan Travis comes out. He's gonna have a little bit. He's going to struggle a little bit at the start. I just think he usually takes a little bit to get going. But once he does, I think Florida State gets the job done here. Even though Duke does have a notably good pass defense, especially in the ACC comparatively to other teams, I just don't think Riley Leonard's passing ability is going to be enough to dominate Florida State. So, Margo?
Florida State's run defense is not really that good this year, which Duke does very good. I think this game is definitely going to come down to the wire. Duke controls time of possession, but I think Keon Coleman makes a good play late. He's probably the third best receiver in college football. And Duke just doesn't really have anyone to guard him. So give me Florida State here, but I think this game will be much closer than it should be and might move them down a bit in the rankings as they edge past Duke here.
All right, next up, number 14, Utah at number 18, USC. In my opinion, I just think Utah absolutely dominates this one. USC came out slow last week. They're going to come out slow again, and they're just going to get absolutely tromped on by Utah. I mean, that defense is going to shut down Caleb Williams. As hard as it may seem, I think Utah's defense is going to perfectly counter Caleb Williams, shut him down, and Utah is going to even though they don't have that good of an offense, they'll probably still put up 28 points against this atrocious USC defense. Margo?
This Utah pass defense, I mean, they're pretty good, but they're not that good. Their run defense is one of the best in the country. So I think USC heavily depends on the pass. I think that, I mean, I just don't think Utah can score. This USC defense was not even that bad last week. Notre Dame just had the ball inside the 20 every single time. I think Utah, I mean, their offense is legitimately awful. Nate Johnson has a 40% completion percentage. Like, I think they put up like 25 points. And if you tell USC's offense to go put up 25 points, I think they can do it. I think they have a very, very close win here against Utah. Kind of proving that both teams really aren't that good, but I think USC is slightly better.
All right, moving into our final game of the week, the number 7 Penn State Nittany Lions against the number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, this is a very good matchup. Both teams similar yards per game. Penn State is slightly better on the defensive side of the ball, but then again, I mean, even though Penn State has some lockdown guys on defense like Kalen King, stopping Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be hard no matter who you are, no matter what cornerbacks you have, no matter how many guys you put on him. He's just always going to be good. But then again, for Penn State, you have Kyle McCord, quarterback for OSU, who has, I mean, some people are impressed by him, but like I would say most are pretty underwhelmed by him. Just he hasn't been able to really feed Marvin Harrison Jr. like CJ Stroud was able to do for most of the season. So, I mean, that's your layout for the matchup. As far as who I have, I do think Ohio State gets it done here in overtime. I think 42 to I'm going to say 45 to 42. They get it done in OT. Just very close battle, but OSU pulls away in the end. Marco?
I don't think this game is going to be very high scoring. These are a couple inexperienced quarterbacks coming off a year, sitting behind a better quarterback. Although Sean Clifford really wasn't that good. But I think both quarterbacks struggle a bit here. Their first real major matchup, McCord already had kind of a big matchup, but this is their first like huge playoff implication midseason matchup. At least for Allard it is. But I think Penn State can rely on that run game better than Ohio State can. Trayvon Henderson's been banged up in the last few weeks. So I think Penn State gets it done. They control the line of scrimmage. Their defense, I mean, Abdul Carter, Chop Robinson, Kalen King, those are just a few guys that will dominate here. I think King does enough on Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison already has struggled against elite corners in Notre Dame's Benjamin Morrison. I don't think that Marvin Harrison goes for over 150 here, which is, if you don't let him go off, then I think you're okay. I think Lampert Smith has a couple big catches, so give me Penn State here. They control the line of scrimmage. Get it done here, 28 to 20 here.
Yeah, you said you don't think it's going to be a high-scoring battle, which I definitely see a possibility of. But also just when you look at the, like, past matchups against these two teams, and I get there have been better quarterbacks in those matchups, it's always like in the high 30s. So I mean, I just think the way these two teams battle, it's just gonna be a high scoring affair, really, regardless of what players are on each team.
Yeah, definitely a possibility.
All right, you got anything else?
No.
All right, thank you all for listening to the Second Take Podcast. We will see you next week. Peace.